how's it going? It's dolltr. Thank you so much for checking out my live performance of Lose Control by MEDUZA and Becky Hill and Goodboys, one of my more favorite recent tracks, even though it came out a while ago. But yeah, for a little bit of context, I did this as a part of, I guess, a short concert series that I was doing with some of my students. Apart from my dolltr hat, I also am a professor, so I teach at a college called Berkeley College of Music, so do stuff over there for live performance and production and all of that. And yeah, this was put together kind of at the last minute, because what usually happens, for a bit more context, you can skip down the video if you don't want to listen to this, is I do like a final week of concerts with my class, and that's when I'm really in, like, you know, Professor Claire mode, which is very different from dolltr. So now I am, I guess, kind of like a little bit in between when I'm explaining this. But yeah, I thought it might be a cool opportunity to walk you through a little bit of the dolltr setup. So this is, I guess, Claire explaining that for dolltr. I'm going to do a longer video, or hopefully I will, for my students to explain this a lot more in depth. But in the meantime, I thought it might be kind of cool to just give a general walkthrough for folks who might be looking for just a quick snippet. So if you haven't seen the performance yet, I'd love for you to first check it out. You can click somewhere in either in the description, or I'll put a link somewhere to the original dolltr performance. Oh yeah, when I'm programming stuff for dolltr in general, very broadly speaking, what I do for individual songs as well as longer live sets, if anyone has seen me perform live, is my goal when I'm programming and preparing rather, is to always give dolltr the best onstage experience, right? So for me, with my Claire brain, it's like, and this is from my background, doing this professionally for other artists too, like I do a lot of live experience design, is how do we optimize things so that it's exciting for the artist to perform, and they don't necessarily have to, you know, think too much about the techie stuff, but they can still be like, okay, I'm gonna press a button, it's gonna do like a certain sound like that, right? So, or, you know, launch a certain clip with the controllers. So that's the overarching principle, right? Now, keeping that in mind, what I did want to focus on a little bit more was the physical setup, because I could show you the Ableton Live setup, which you can kind of see over here, but that would also take a very long time. And if you look at my original video too, the reason why I don't really like it too much really is when I perform live, I tend to do this. So I tend to actually turn off the screen, because for me, and people feel differently about this, for me, I found that when the screen is on, the temptation is to kind of look at it even though you don't need it. So for me, I like, in dolltr mode especially, right? I don't think the audience wants to see dolltr checking her email, quote unquote. But if dolltr is having fun and doing stuff, looking at you, that's a little bit more of what we're going for. But yeah, let's take a look at the controllers, so and hardware rather. So over here I've got the setup with my laptop. I kind of did that. It's running Live 11 Suite. I love using Live for performance. The other software I use a lot is Bitwig, but for this purpose, I wanted to use Live also because I teach Live, for going back to my educational thing. So there it is. I have two things stacked on top of each other here. I have a wireless in-ear unit as well as a wireless mic unit. And I really I did not start off with this setup. This kind of evolved, right? Something that students will ask sometimes is like, should I buy this now? When I first started doing electronics, I was doing mostly like totally wired stuff. The only reason I started going wireless was because I wanted to upgrade myself, you know, after a couple of years really, and I started investing in these things. Since then, they've lasted me for quite a while, though. It's a Shure mic system and then a Takstar in-ear system. So they're not super, you know, the most expensive things either, but they do the job. I've been really happy with them. So yay! Woo. Maybe due for an upgrade soon, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I started doing it because in a lot of my live shows, sometimes for dolltr stuff, I'll like walk around the stage, and then I found that I was getting stuck on cables, so didn't really want that. Next to that, I've got a hub, powered USB hub. Would highly recommend really if you're using multiple controllers. I often make sure that I bring a powered hub with me. What's next? So yeah, just because sometimes what's happened is I've had, you know, hubs that are not powered, and then sometimes one of the, you know, computer things goes wrong, and it's like, everything dies in the middle of a set, and then you're trying to like plug things back into your setup and figure out what's wrong and troubleshoot, and it's like, don't want that happening, especially for like higher stakes setups as my career, you know, went along. Next to that, I've got my audio interface over here. This is the Apogee Duet, one of my favorites. To be very frank, I don't use it or I haven't really toured with it quite a lot because sometimes I prefer using one of my other interfaces, which is I think in one of my luggages somewhere. The K-Mix, the Keith by Keith McMillan, that actually has more outputs. This one can give you up to 4 independent mono or 2 pairs of stereo, but the K-Mix can do up to 10. So it can give you like a stereo headphone cue and then 8 outs, which I sometimes prefer. But for home setups and so on, it's not bad. So that's there. Yay. Next, let's take a look at the MIDI stuff, or again, this is still kind of hardware, but MIDI things. Here is the APC40. It's kind of like the brain of this particular setup. In most of the live setups that I do, the controllers kind of change depending on the set. So I do have a very fluid setup. So I'm not really the kind of artist who, once I have a setup, I'll do that. I think a part of a lot of the dolltr joy on stage is sometimes finding like happy accidents. So I try to keep things exciting for dolltr when she's doing that. But I always, regardless of the setup, have one controller that is a little bit of the brain in terms of controlling live's session view. All right, so that could be the APC40. In this case, you can use the arrows to kind of navigate up and down, do different banks as well. So you can move along quite quickly. If I don't have this, then I'll usually have push, Ableton Push 2, specifically, or I will have Launchpad. So it could be either Launchpad Pro, which is there, or Launchpad X, which is there. So I might have either one of those. And let's see, over here, what else am I doing here though? So APC40 is really good because it comes with a control script, right? So if you wanted to use a lot of the built-in features, you totally could. But I actually have quite a few custom mappings here, mostly in the device control section. So if you don't do any of your own mappings, what Live will do is it'll kind of react to whichever device you currently have selected on a given track, and these will kind of automatically map to those, but I've done very specific mappings in my case. So this knob, for example, is my quarter note ping pong delay. So I like doing a little bit of vocal effects, and then there's like a big reverb as well. There are a couple of global effects too. I think I have, let's see, reset a few things. What's over here? This one is it's a big delay on the master. This one's a big delay, a reverb, excuse me, on the master. So there's actually two of them. One is to the master, so everything, and then one specific to vocals. And then here's a high pass filter. Here's a low pass filter. Okay. Right. And these might change depending on the live set, right? So if I were doing not just this one song, but maybe if I were doing like a longer set, which I'm about to do in the coming months, yay, for some shows, I might change my mind about these. So always very fluid, flexible, thinking of what works for a very specific instance, very specific performance. And I think that I like that. It's fun. Okay, and then I've got the crossfader here. So usually, this is interesting. Sometimes when I choose the APC40 specifically, I want to choose it because I do things like DJing with it in live. And I love that it has the crossfader because you can actually assign that all from here. So if I ever do a gig that I'm asked to DJ and I don't have CDJs or I don't have my controller with me, I have like a Roland controller where you can do like 808 stuff live also, which is fun for me. If I don't have that, then I usually like going for the APC40 so that there's some kind of crossfader thing that you can map over here. But in this case, though, my crossfader is doing
some octave down stuff.
Anyway, there was like a fun bit in the middle where in the original track by MEDUZA and Becky Hill and Goodboys, they do like pitch. It's a lower octave, but I thought it'd be fun to
do that live. Whoa!
So that's what that's doing over here. And let's move on to, so that's the APC40. Let's move on to this. This is the starrypad by dolltr. They sent this controller to me. Thank you all so much. I love it. It's so great. It's Claire-sized. I joke. It's dolltr size. It's proportionate to her. Sometimes when I'm planning for gigs too, and this is a part of a reason why I wouldn't bring the APC40 with me, I try to think a lot about portability, right? So when I've done tours in the past, I've usually tried to go for smaller pieces of gear, so probably not the APC40, but something like the starrypad works great. So it's got a set of faders. You can actually have multiple banks of the faders, which is really cool, as well as knobs too. So knobs and fader banks. That's actually the fader bank. It's the knob bank. And pad banks as well. Right, so it's a 4x4 classic kind of MPC style layout. But the way that I often like using pads is for two purposes. It could either be to trigger a sound, so it could be something like that heartbeat thing at the beginning, or it could be to play certain clips or potentially even execute some loops. So I won't press any now because stuff might start playing. But maybe this one is okay though. Let's see if this one plays. Yeah, cool. So it's my 1-bar kind of riser, if you will. So yeah, they're all kind of doing different types of things. I got a classic kick drum, some snares for fills here, and then also a clap too. Velocity sensitive, which is great. If you don't want it to be velocity sensitive, then you can turn on full level. Then everything's going to be at the full. But I usually don't like doing that because I prefer things that are a little bit more dynamic. And I also think maybe this is more from, I guess, a technical slash versatility or developing your own skills as a live electronic performer sort of technique. I found that a lot of folks, myself included at a certain stage in my career, I used to put everything on full level and then I would actually have no control, or I would be a little bit lazy, if you will. So I think if you're serious about developing, your finger drumming technique, it's good to, take away the full level so that you really understand your relationship between how much effort you're putting in versus that's going to actually give you the sound that you want. So yeah, maybe it's a little bit of a dolltr thing, I guess. But yeah, so that is the starrypad. I've also got a couple of other things mapped, like this one is doing a specific overdub section for when I layer the kick drum with the clap at a certain point. Then I've also got a stop for the drums going, which is a custom addition too. But yeah, I love the feel of the pads. It's so small and so light and so wonderful. I can just pack it in my bag. And that's actually what I did when I was planning for this. I was on the road for a little bit, so I just put this in my bag. I was programming on the train for dolltr. So yay! Thank you so much again to the Donner people. That was great. And forgot to mention, these two faders over here, what I was using them for was really introducing some higher stuff. That was so vague. Some drum things, hi-hats and tambourines specifically. Let's see if we can head over to a section, actually, over here that does have all of that. Ah, yes. Okay, cool. So I'll launch a drum clip from the second drop-ish. I don't like the word drop. I guess second large chorus section after the first chorus section. So here it is. Cool. So it sounds at first that there's a kick drum, there's like a low tom too, there's an offbeat hi-hat. But if I push these faders up, there's actually a kind of a swung 16th hi-hat pattern that I get to fade in and fade out. It's not volume though. Ooh. And there's also a tambourine. Okay. Let's pause that for now. It's not volume, and this is maybe one thing that I think is a little bit of a dolltr thing that she likes to do also in performance. Is I think there's a lot more fun playing with not just traditional volume but rather color. So because of that, these are not volume controls, but they're filters. So if we go to the very first clip, banana, there it is. Okay. So if I go to this one, at first it's just like claps, and then a mysterious ticking noise. Woo! Any Harry Potter Potter puppet pals? Mysterious ticking noise. But what is that? Right? It is that 16th note hi-hat thing. So that's going on over there. And then if we go to a later part where the hi-hats are already there, but there's some other stuff. I believe it's doing the big break. Okay, here it is. Okay, so hi-hats are there already, and also the tom. But there's a tambourine that also fades in. And that is also through filtering. So yeah, big fan of filters in place of volume controls. And that's all done here from the starrypad. So this is kind of like the brain as well. In a lot of my setups, which you may have seen from other videos too, if there is the brain for form control, then there's usually a brain for other kinds of live elements over here. Right now, speaking of live elements, one other addition that I had for this particular set, also from the Donner people, thank you again, Donner, for this, is a synth bass. It's their Donner synth bass, which is an analog synthesizer and sequencer. I wasn't really using it for sequencing in this case, but was using it for some synth sounds. It's really great. You can do a lot of onboard control over here. So I was in the middle, actually, or towards the end, I think, of the piece. At first, it starts off with a relatively low cutoff on the bass. But before I even talk about that, let's just listen to this for a second. So, really straightforward as far as like the kind of notes go to play. This song is in the key of C minor, so as long as you know your skills and so on, you should be able to play stuff. But yeah, the ending ended up becoming a little bit more of like an improvisatory section where I would play stuff and also change the cutoff filter. There were a couple of other times when I was rehearsing for this that ending section ended up being longer, and I was doing a little bit more free stuff. But I found that with that take that we just did, that I ended up with, or if I say just, but in the performance video, if you're looking at that, it was suitable, I think, for what happens. Because sometimes what happens is the middle section also gets a little bit longer. There's like an interlude. But yeah, so playing just a little bit, very straightforward manner with the cutoff filter, right? Again, using filter as volume control as well, so doing a lot of that. But yeah, it sounds really great on this particular synth. Now, something that's maybe could be more useful as a technical sort of thing for setup, right? Is usually for a lot of my synths, I tend to not play with the volume knob for the purposes of gain staging. If I want to change my volumes of it, I'll either change it at the interface level, or I will change it in the in the setup of the live set itself. It's mostly just for consistency, because I've found in the past that when I have brought in synths, like I actually used to use the Roland Gaia a lot. Ew, I love the Gaia, so good. I used to use that a lot, and I found that in playing with the volume knob of the Gaia, sometimes it would like really throw off so many of my settings, which maybe also speaks to something else, right? If your synth, and the Donner synth bass can do this, if your synth comes with some kind of software editor, I would really highly recommend saving presets there that you can then send to your synth. Because what will sometimes happen is, like, if I put this in my bag, which I have done, these two are very portable. It's like, ooh, so light. What can happen is the knobs can screw up, right? And you don't want your sound to be screwed up. So if you do have some kind of preset that's loaded in the editor on your computer, you can send it to the synth, and it'll recall that preset so that you don't have to worry too much about the settings and so on. So yeah, that's the synth analog stuff. Woo! Yay! I was really happy about that. I love playing a little bit of stuff live. But if I didn't have this, like if I was using a controller, I'd probably just grab like a keyboard, one of my other keyboards, which you may have seen in my other performances as well. But yeah, that's an overview of the setup. See, my goodness, I talked for so long, and I didn't even speak about the programming of the live set yet, but I probably will do that for my students anyway. But in the meantime, hope you enjoyed this breakdown of dolltr performing her thing of Lose Control by MEDUZA and Becky Hill and Goodboys. It's such a killing track. I love it so much. But yeah, I mean, all in all, perhaps as a wrap-up, I would say this. If anything ever seems overwhelming, just keep in mind that I think it takes a lot of time. And sometimes, even as a performer, or even as my design self, designing things for a performer, my job as a designer is to kind of make things look easy. And then as a performer, I take over the duties from Claire when I'm in dolltr mode, and I'm like, okay, it's for sure got to look easy and enjoyable for people to look at, right? Because if I look stressed out, then there isn't that. So people ask me, my students, especially the ones who just start, how do you make things look so easy? Practice, practice, practice. Do your due diligence, right? Practice these things. There's a really great phrase from Doctor Strange that is maybe a giveaway because I'm a huge MCU fan. I love Marvel. That he asks, I think, the Ancient One, and I'm paraphrasing this, like, how do you get so good at something? And then she throws back a question to him, and she's like, how do you become a great doctor? And he says, years of study and practice. There it is. Thank you, Marvel, for the wisdom. There's lots of really great quotes in that movie. But yeah, so that's a little bit of this. Lots of practice, but I will say after a while it gets easier. I don't think I would have ever done this on day one that I took a look at Ableton Live. But now, here we are, yay. And yeah, this is, for me now at this stage, this is definitely one of the less complicated setups I've done So if you've seen some of my other videos, it's like sometimes I do like really ridiculous stuff, and it's like, why? Because it's fun for doll trick. It makes her happy, so she does that. Yay! Thank you so much again for watching, everyone. If you'd like to look at more of my educational stuff, you can follow me at The Small Prof, which is my teaching and educational handle. Doll trick is my artist project, so I keep that pretty separate. But maybe there will be opportunities for crossovers, so we'll see. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye. Doll trick.